Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 1, Genealogical Table of the Daughters of Manu, starting text 33. Samo bhut brahmano shena datto vishnostu yogavit durvasa sankarshayangsho nibhodangi rasa praja. Translation. Thereafter, from the partial representation of Brahma, the moon god was born of them. From the partial representation of Vishnu, the great mystic Dattatreya was born. And from the partial representation of Sankarshana, Lord Shiva, Durvasa was born. Now you may hear from me of the many sons of Angira. Once again, thereafter, from the partial representation of Brahma, the moon god was born of them. From the partial representation of Vishnu, the great mystic Dattatreya was born. And from the partial representation of Sankarshana, Lord Shiva, Shankara, Lord Shiva, Durvasa was born. Now you may hear from me of the many sons of Angira. It's very interesting. From Brahma, moon is born because moon is passionate, very high level of opulence. Dattatreya was born from Vishnu, and Durvasa Muni has a bit of an anger, but he's very highly advanced. He was born from Shankara. Dattatreya is a very famous rishi also. Shraddha Tvangirasa Patni Chatasho Sutakanyaka Sinivali Kuhuraka Chaturthyanumatishthatha. Angira's wife, Shraddha, gave birth to 4 daughters named Sinivali, Kuhu, Raka, and Anumati. Tatputrav aparavastam Kyato svarocishentare Utatyo Bhagavan Sakshad Pramishtas cha Brahaspati. Besides these 4 daughters, she also had another 2 sons. One of them was known as Utatya, and the other was the learned scholar Brahaspati. So in the early ages, everyone was a rishi. So it's actually hard to find men who could get married and produce children. And that's why finally Brahma, being frustrated, observing that all of his children would become saints because the atmosphere is so pure, they would just want to become rishis and go back to Godhead. Because it was a very, very exalted, elevated society, but also the souls being born were very, very elevated. We're going to be born to Brahma and in his Brahma Loka. So then finally Brahma created a person, intentionally created someone who could produce millions of children. And that was Daksha. That is Daksha. And therefore the next chapter is on Daksha. We see here, the other sons, they had daughters, but then the other sons were Uttatya and Brahaspati. So, again, Brahaspati is a great sage and not much luck. And therefore, we see eventually Daksha comes, and then in the next chapter is the whole story of Daksha. Pulastyo janayat patnyam agastyam cha havir bhuvi Sonya Janmani Ragnir Vishravascha Mahatapa. Pulastya begot in his wife Havir Bhu one son of the name Agatsya, who in his next birth became Dahragni. Dahragni. Besides him, Pulastya begot another very great and saintly son, whose name was Vishrava. Vishrava. Tasya yaksha patir deva kuberas vidasuta ravana kumkararnascha tathan yasyam vibhishana. Vishrava had two wives. The first wife was Idavida, from whom Kuvera, the master of all yakshas, was born. And the next wife was named Keshini, from whom three sons were born, Ravana, Kumkarana, and Vibhishana. So, even the demons, just see. From one wife, Kuvera, the demigods were born, and from the other wife, there are three sons, Ravana, Kumkara, and Vibhishan. So why the Bhagavatam is giving all this genealogy? Because it stops where the story begins. In other words, wherever great devotees of the Lord or the Lord appear, or there's a great spiritual message, there the Srimad Bhagavatam will stop. So it said this person's son, this person's daughter, this person's sons, like this, they'll keep telling. And then when there's a great soul in the dynasty, then Shukadev Goswami or Suta Goswami, they'll stop and they'll say, okay, now we will relate that story to you. And so the pastime of Daksha and Shiva is very, very instructive. And that's why the Bhagavatam stops there. Even though Daksha is not an extremely, you could say, advanced soul in comparison to others at that time, but his teaching is very advanced, and Lord Shiva's pastime is very advanced, and all those things. So then we have that. Similarly, in the ninth canto, the pastime of Lord Ram will be described, and then they will start from this point of Ravan, Kumkaran, and Vibhishan. Pulasya gatir bharya trinasuta sati sutan karma shrestham variyangsam sahishnum cha mahamate. Gati, the wife of the sage Pulaha, gave birth to three sons named Karma Shrestha, Variyan, and Sahishnu, and all of them were great sages. See, again, all of them were sages. Gati, the wife of Pulaha, was the fifth daughter of Kardama Muni. She was very faithful to her husband, and all her sons were as good as he. So Kardama Muni and Devahuti had also many daughters. And after that, Kapila is born. So these are the descendants of the daughters of Kapil Muni. Kratorapi kriya bharya valakhilyan asuyata rishin shashti sahasrani jwalato brahma tejasa. Kratu's wife, Kriya, gave birth to 60,000 great sages, named the Valakilyas. All these sages were greatly advanced in spiritual knowledge, and their bodies were illuminated by such knowledge. So imagine, wow, someone giving birth to 60,000 people. 60,000 people. And then not just that, but they all become great sages. So 60,000, and not one of them became a householder to further the dynasty. Kriya was the sixth daughter of Kardamuni, and she produced 60,000 sages who were known as the Valakilyas because they all retired from family life as Vanaprasthas. So these sages, they, imagine the spiritual strength that Kriya, the sixth daughter of Kardamuni, had to produce 60,000 sages. Obviously, it was not materially possible for someone to do something like this. Urjayam jajnire putra vishishtasya parantapa chitraketu pradhanaste sapta brahmarshayo mala. The great sage Vashishta begot in his wife Urja, sometimes called Arundhati, 7 spotless great sages, headed by the sage named Chitraketu. These are all names that we recognize: Arundhati and Chitraketu. Chitraketu Suroshesha Viraja Mitra Evacha Ulbano Vasubhridhyano Yuman Shakyadayo Pare. The names of these 7 sages are as follows: Chitraketu, Surochi, Viraja, Mitra, Ulbana, Vasubhridhyana, and Dyuman. Some other very competent sons were born from Vashishta's other wife. Urja, who is sometimes known as Arundhati and was the wife of Vashishta, was the 9th daughter of Kardama Muni. Chittisvatharvana patni lebhe putram dhrita vratam dadhyancham ashvashir rasam brigor vamsham nibodhame. Chitti, wife of the sage Atharva, gave birth to a son named Ashvashira by accepting a great vow called Dadhyancha. Now you may hear from me about the descendants of the sage Bhrigu. The wife of Atharva, known as Chitti, is also known as Shanti. She was the eighth daughter of Kardama Muni. Bhrigu khyatya mahabhaga patnyam putran ajijanat dhataram cha vidhataram shriyam cha bhagavat param. The sage Bhrigu was highly fortunate. In his wife, known as Khyati, he begot 2 sons named Dhata and Vidhata. Dhata and Vidhata. And 1 daughter named Shri, who was very much devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. See, we're reading about the sons, they all become sages, and here the Bhagavatam describes that they had a daughter named Shri, who was very much devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the ladies at that time were also very great exalted souls. So great that here in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's being noted, right? It's being noted and mentioned. And Devahuti also was such an exalted soul, a pure devotee. She had Krishna as her son. So Bhagavatam is full of examples of male and female great saintly souls. And then here it's being said, Shriyam, a daughter named Shri, Ja Bhagavat Param, a great devotee of the Lord. Specifically, Bhagavat Param. This lady, Shri, was Bhagavat Param. We see in the scriptures how the women were chanting the Brahma Gayatri mantra. They're reciting the Vedas. Some of them even had disciples. So in previous times, the women were very much respected and exalted. And this is why our philosophy is very egalitarian. It is very equal to men and women. it, of course, engages them according to their natures. So you won't see that many women becoming renunciates or ascetics or big gurus because it's not their nature so much to do so. But if they have the proclivity, the desire, and the capacity to do so, they were not forbidden. If they had the qualification to do so, they were not forbidden. And in fact, they were greatly glorified, as we see here in the words of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Ayatim niyatim chaiva sute merustayoradat tabhyam tayor abhavatam mrikanda prana evacha. The sage Meru had two daughters named Ayati and Niyati, whom he gave in charity to Dhata and Vidhata. Ayati and Niyati gave birth to two sons, Mrikanda and Prana. So the two daughters, Ayati and Niyati, were married to Dhata and Vidhata. Markandeyo Mrikandasya Pranad Veda Shiramuni Kavischa Bhargavo Yasya Bhagavan Ushana Sutta. From Mrikanda, Markandeya Muni was born, and from Prana, the sage Vedashira, whose son was Ushana Shukracharya, also known as Kavi. Thus Kavi also belonged to the descendants of the Bhrigu dynasty. त एते मुनय क्षत्तर लोकान् सर्गैर अभावयन् एषे कर्दम दौहित्र संतान कथितस्तव शृण्वता श्रद्धानस्य सद्य पापहरा परा प्रसूतिं मानवीं दक्ष upayeme hyajatmaja. My dear Vidura, the population of the universe was thus increased by the descendants of these sages and the daughters of Kardama. Anyone who hears the descriptions of this dynasty with faith will be relieved from all sinful reactions. Another of Manu's daughters, known as Prasuti, married the son of Brahma named Daksha. See, coming to Daksha here. Prasuti married Daksha, and Prasuti was a amazing person. She produced not just millions of children, but millions of children of all different species. Even different animals and reptiles and birds, everything. So she was empowered by the Lord to do this amazing service, which was not possible for any ordinary person. So one may think, well, why did I read this? It's so amazing, right? That just by reading this, our sinful reactions are being relieved. Congratulations, everyone on the call. That just by reading these descendants, we think, this is just names and more names and names. But by reading the names of these great personalities, of these great sages, of these wonderful, empowered persons, purified persons, we get relieved from all sinful reactions. This is why the 10th canto Bhagavatam says that these narrations are virtuous in of themselves. Just by hearing them, one becomes fortunate because the narrations themselves are virtuous. Even if one does not act on them, even if one does not understand them, just by hearing them, one becomes purified from sinful reactions. So these are the descendants of Manu and Kardam Muni and Brahma. Tasyam sasarja duhri shodashamalalochana trayodashadat dharmaya tathaikam agnaye vibhu. Daksha begot 16 very beautiful daughters with lotus-like eyes in his wife Prasuti. Of these 16 daughters, 13 were given in marriage to Dharma, and one daughter was given to Agni. When we wonder why 13, why one, sometimes it was divinely ordained, other times it was the choice of the daughters. If they felt attracted to Dharma, they would marry him. And many such examples. In the Bhagavatam, there's another example where there's a sage. I'm forgetting the name now completely, but he went to the king and asked for one of his daughters in marriage. Now, he was an old, raggedy sage, and the king just looked at the sage and started to laugh and said, "How can you marry one of my daughters? You're an old sage." So because he was a mystic, a great mystic yogi, he then leaves and he turns himself into a strong young man and a great prince. And he comes back in his chariot like some days later, and then he says, um, I am interested in marrying your daughters and your daughter. And this king, not recognizing, of course, there's no way for recognizing that this sage was, this young prince was actually the sage. He says, yes, no problem. And so he arranges a meeting with this young prince and his daughters. And when the daughters saw the handsome, beautiful young prince, all of them desired to marry the prince. And so they all married the prince, who was actually a sage, and so they all married the sage. And then the prince turns himself back into the sage, and he says to them, "Ha ha ha, you see, you thought I was an ordinary sage, and now not just one, he had just come to ask for one princess, then he ends up marrying all of them." If anyone remembers the name of this sage, the story is there in the Bhagavatam, please unmute and share it. I'm forgetting the name, but this is not uncommon. Yes, go ahead.
He's the Muni who did the tapasya in the water, and this is the Matsya, right? The fish.
Is it the same one?
Yeah, same Muni. Prabhuji.
Okay, that's what's starts with an S. His name.
Then he wants to get married.
Yes, Shobari. No, not
Sobari Muni. Sobari Muni. Yeah,
yes,
someone
Shobari.
texted.
Yes,
Hare Krishna.
Shobari Muni. Yes. So Shobari Muni, he performs an offense to Garuda by stopping him from eating the fish in the river. Garuda is a vulture, so pure devotee of the Lord, but in his body, his natural food is fish. And he thought, oh, how bad this is. And so he stops him, and that's a great offense to this great devotee. And thus he becomes attracted to the lives of the fish. He sees, they are having a fun time. I should become like them. And then you're right, he desires to get married. He goes to the king, and all of this happens. Yes. Thank you, Mataji, for reminding. One of the remaining two daughters was given in charity to the Pitraloka, where she resides very amicably, and the other was given to Lord Shiva, who is a deliverer of sinful persons from material entanglement. Wow. The names of the 13 daughters of Daksha who were given to Dharma are Shraddha, Maitri, Daya, Shanti, Tushti, Pushti, Kriya, Unnati, Buddhi, Medha, Titiksha, Hri, and Murti. These 13 daughters produced the following sons. Shraddha gave birth to Shubha. Maitri produced Prasada. Daya gave birth to Abhaya. Shanti gave birth to Sukha. Tushti gave birth to Muda. Pushti gave birth to Smaya. Kriya gave birth to Yoga. Unnati gave birth to Darpa. Buddhi gave birth to Artha. Medha gave birth to Smriti. Titiksha gave birth to Kshema. And Hri gave birth to Prashraya. Murti, a reservoir of all respectable qualities, gave birth to Sri Naranarayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Wow. Yes. So nice. And just see, one of the daughters was given to Lord Shiva as well. So we'll read about that. Yayorjan manyado vishvam abhanandat sunirvritam manangsi kakubhovata prasedu saritodraya. On the occasion of the appearance of Naranarayan, the entire world was full of joy. Everyone's mind became tranquil, and thus in all directions the air, the rivers, and the mountains became pleasant. And so when the Lord is glorified, when the Lord appears, when anything happens in relation to the Lord, everyone becomes joyful, fully tranquil, and everything in this world becomes fully auspicious. So this is our quota for today. We were supposed to read until text 53. So we've made it to text 53. And it's also our quota of time. It's 8 o'clock. So if anyone has any comments, reflections, questions, you may share them now.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank
Hare
you for
Krishna,
reading.
Prabhu.
You put 10 verses. I think you read so many. Thank you. I think yesterday also we couldn't do, so you read those also. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Chapter 52.
Thank
So
you.
I was when we were reading this, Prabhu, earlier, I was kind of thinking, I mean, how is it? Oh, Krishna, I have a meeting, Prabhu, now. So
Okay, no
how is
problem.
it? Sukadeva Goswami remembers so many names, right? I mean, it's like
That's amazing.
generation
Yes.
after generation is kind of uh,
Yes.
explains. It
Yes,
was.
it's amazing. I know they have everything in their mind. It's so, and that's why it's coming from their heart. Krishna's, like Prabhupada said when he was writing his books, he said, I'm not writing. Krishna's telling me what to write. And similarly, is the same for all of these great sages and Shukadeva Goswami, Suta Goswami, that it is, Krishna says, Mata Smriti Jnanam Apohanam Cha. Krishna is a source of remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Their knowledge, the remembrance of all of this is coming directly from Krishna, from within the heart. It's not coming from some, it's not there because of some genius mind that they have. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Prabhu. Nice point.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I was wondering, like, we are just not able to remember just the name of one Muni in the stories. I'm thinking about the story, but not getting the real name.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, so wonderful. So those
Yes.
days are different, and those atmas are different, as you said, because everyone is born for a special purpose, and no one is interested in getting into samsara and into progeny. I think. Yeah.
Yes,
Hare
very
Krishna.
true.
Yeah. We
The
are
time and age is
completely
so different.
opposite. Yeah.
Yes. And that's why people, they look back and they say, well, why were they treating people like this? Why did they treat women like this, that? But we have to understand that that time and age was so different. Like, people were so pure in heart, in mind, and everyone was so exalted.
Yes.
Like we were discussing yesterday in the Sunday class, that how in Satyug, 99%, it's described, 99% of the population was in Sattva Gun and fully God. Only 1%, less than
Yeah.
1%, was that. And, they were just, like people like Daksha, who were a little bit interested in family life, material life. Everyone else was sages. So imagine their mindset, their vision, their mystic power. And that's why many of the things that they did, we cannot imitate today. Like, for example, the number of children. That's obvious. But then if that, we cannot imitate that, there's other things also that they did, which was, of their time and of their level, like you're saying. Yes.
And I feel like there are differences in Varna and Asrama, how they are they're divided in those days, and also they're appropriate also. So we also have difference between men and women because we have our own dharma and they have their own dharma. We can't compete and we can't mix up. That causes all the confusion.
Yes. Yes. And the Varnashram system was natural at that time because they did Garbhodhan Sanskar.
Mhm.
And because of that, a Brahmana son would be a Brahmana son, a Kshatriya son would be a Kshatriya son, because through Garbhodhan Sanskar, they attracted a child that was exactly the same samskara as the parents, right? Their consciousness, they would attract. So now in Kali Yuga, that's not the case. And so therefore the system of Varnashram is based strictly on guna and karma, qualities and activities. But before it was also based on Janma, a little bit on Janma, because it was always the case that, because of Garbhodhan Sanskar, people were generally who they were, what the family that they were born in. So there's no question of, like that. So anyway, it's very, um, it's very nice. And then also, like you said, women's dharma, men's dharma, we find the examples there in Bhagavatam. So nicely described. And the principles are so wonderful. Not everything, like we said, we can duplicate in this day and age, but we can learn by their example. Yes. Any other?
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna, Mataji.
Dandat pranams, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Everybody shared, I'm also just repeating the same. It was so nice, today you were like just reading all the verses. It's not just one verse today, but it was so beautiful. As Lakshmikanta Prabhu was saying, like, how Sukadeva Goswami is remembering all the names. It's not about, we are all in this Kali Yuga, very less memory. But still, I remember my spiritual master used to say when he's, if it's like a Gaura Purnima nearing or Nityananda Trayodashi, lots of names from the past times. But he always says, yes, there's going to be lots of names, but that's okay. You don't have to, even in the case of Ramayana, there'll be lots of names, but that's
Yes.
okay. You don't have to remember all the names. But still, you also mentioned that just hearing the past times, it relieves a lot of anxiety in us, So all we need to do is just read Srimad Bhagavatam, hear Srimad Bhagavatam. That really purify ourselves. And in this age of Kali, what else can we do? How fortunate we are. That's what was running in my mind. Like, how merciful Srila Prabhupada, how compassionate he is towards all of us. Wonderful,
Yes.
Prabhu. Thank you.
Yes.
I felt very special today, reading just all the verses and just hearing. It was so beautiful. Thank you.
And Mataji, that's also because of your taste, isn't it? Because it's so true that when we have taste for Bhagavatam, like you have, and for scriptures in general, and for Krishna's service in general, then whatever we read, we get taste from it. Otherwise, we read, oh, this is just names, or we read, oh, this is philosophy. What we see, even in a section that's just a list of names, all of us were getting so much taste, isn't it? It's just because it's Bhagavatam, it's spiritual, it's transcendental. We were getting so much taste. Otherwise, we don't get taste, right? We just feel, this is a big dictionary or something. No, we were getting taste because of this, like you were saying, Maharaj was saying that this is just so nectarian. It relieves you of material sinful reactions, and those sinful reactions are the cause of our conditioning, which is the cause of our anxiety. So it is relieving the burden, so to say, of material life upon us, and taking us to Krishna. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Anything else? Kiran Mataji, Hema Mataji. Okay, we'll stop here then. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Just trying to see. I mean, for me, it's very hard to even connect to not just forget about remembering the names, just to remember the relationships between all these sages and sons and daughters and stuff. I can't even remember. So I'm like, yeah, I was just wondering how it's done in the Bhagavatam.
Yeah. So yes. Yep. It's a spiritual intelligence, spiritual knowledge, isn't it? Because yeah, it's just like some of our great souls in our movement. they also have this potency. They can remember everyone's names. They don't forget. Like when they were, especially when they were actually younger,
Mm-hmm.
then like His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj, my own Guru Maharaj, Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, like they would meet so many people. I mean, they're sannyasis, right? They're meeting literally hundreds of people every day, 200, 300 people every single day. And then 3 years later, they would meet someone who they met 3 years ago, and they would remember. They remember his name. They remember which town he's coming from, what job he's doing. Like it was shocking. And we wouldn't remember people we met 5 days ago. But they
Exactly. This is the empowerment.
that's the empowerment, right?
Mm.
Krishna empowers us according to the service that we have and according to the purity. And they have the service and the purity, and their service is to, be spiritual master of so many people. So Krishna gives them the capacity.
True, true.
Goswami's service is to recite Bhagavatam. So he's giving him the capacity to remember everything.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhuji. Very nice class.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone.